And good morning and happy Monday, a victory Monday after a third preseason game. This is Forging the Falcons. I'm your host, Scott Kennedy. Nick Kendell will be joining me from Seattle not too long. So we will have you covered coast to coast for your Falcons football and more this morning. And it's a big week. It's a bye week, but it is a big week for NFL teams as they must cut down from 80-man rosters down to 53. Now, the rules say that you are allowed to have, uh, you know, 53 players on your active roster, but you're allowed to have 16 players on your practice squads now. So I started looking at it, and I think, okay, 27 players across 30 teams. You're talking, almost 1,000 players are going to be out of jobs, but not necessarily. If you had 16 of the 53, you come up with 69. So you got 69 players there. So you're hoping to go 80 to 69, which means really only 11 players will be, per team will be not invited back to the team. But there will be some swaps. Teams will be scouring the waiver wires and putting in claims and doing all this kind of thing. So it's a really hectic time for not only the players, but the front offices as well. And I know there's not going to be a lot of sleep that's being gotten from NFL personnel and players that are on those second and third teams, because it's certainly a stressful time. Chat is starting to open up in here this morning, and want to say hello to some folks coming in. Cleeta the T has come in. He says, can the Falcons beat the Saints in week 1? Can they? Yes, they can. Will they, though, is a different question. I don't know. I'm trying not to fall in the preseason trap. I looked at the roster. I look at 40% of your NFL salary cap being tied into players that either aren't there or are named Deion Jones, Matt Ryan, Julio Jones, Dante Fowler, Deion Jones. Those 4 players make up 40% of the salary cap. So you're playing with half a team roughly. But how do you not like what you've seen in very key spots from the Atlanta Falcons in the preseason? There's big questions, but there's been some good answers so far. And I'll get into that one a little bit too. So, and Clee, what I want to do next week, and Falcons fans out there, is I want to do maybe every Friday. We'll see how it works with the schedule, but do a from the behind enemy lines type of pod, where I have worked with people for not just virtually from every single NFL team in the country. And I can bring people in. Let's get Kyle Mosley in here to talk Saints Falcons on Friday. So that's something I'm thinking about doing next week. So I want to see, how is life without Sean Payton? Is Michael Thomas back? I've got all those questions too. Roderick Cook coming in says, hey, catching you live, first time in a while. Looking forward to what you have to say. Well, glad you're here. Looking forward to you being here. Albert Knopper says, good morning, Scott. He said the Falcons had a good game. They did. Lots of positives in there. They didn't exactly have murderer's row in the preseason. Was it Lions, Jags, Jets? 7 wins last year. Did Falcons play the Jaguars? I feel like they did. I'm already blanking out on last year. I'm like, those are 3 of the 7 teams I think they beat last year. Joe Cannon saying good morning, Scott. Good morning to you as well, Joe. Victor also coming in. So good morning, Scott. Do you think that Ritter takes over QB1 role at some point in this season? If yes, when? Good question. Do I think he will? I'm kind of hoping he doesn't. Do I think he's capable? Yes, I do. For this team to be the type of team that people think that can knock on the door of a playoff berth towards the end of the season and compete for those type of accolades, you're not going to do it with a rookie quarterback on this roster. Again, 40% of your roster is tied up in people that aren't even on the team or are Deion Jones, who is a linebacker, which is a devalued position, and he hasn't been what he was 3-4 years ago. So I want Marcus Mariota to be, and to be fair, Mariota was good. He was really good in the preseason as well. So Mariota was brought in to be the starter. Ritter is a 3rd-round draft pick who you would like to give a year of seasoning and then be able to make a decision on next year's quarterback class. If Ritter plays with the poise, and it's not just, I can see the arm, I can see the legs, I can see them working together and throwing on the run, but the poise, the command that he has, it's very impressive for a rookie. I think he's been a steal in the third round, and that would give you a lot of options going into next draft, which should have some quarterbacks in it. If you don't want one, you can trade back. You can do all those kind of things. If you happen to be at the top, maybe you get a destroyer and Will Anderson, and you pass on the quarterbacks at the top. But having a good young third round quarterback's not even cost control. That's free. I mean, the Falcons are paying $40 million to Matt Ryan this year to go play for the Colts. They're paying, maybe $1 million to Desmond Ridder over the course, each year of his contract for a third round guy. So it's going to be having Desmond Ridder hit would be a really, really good thing for the Falcons. And I want to hit on that a little bit because William comes in here. Good morning, William, over on Facebook. He says, this is the best I've seen this team look in preseason in a long time. I'm going out on a limb and saying we'll beat the Saints in week 1. I think it's possible. And here's a problem I had. I went through and looked at the ESPN power rankings, and rank them how you want to. I don't have any problem with that. If you think the Falcons are the 32nd team in the NFL, so be it. The problem I had, and Albert made a comment on this. He's like, oh, sorry, Scott. I'm like, listen, I don't care where they're ranked. I'm interested in the process. And the process is they actually moved the Falcons down. They moved them down. All right. Now, if you're objectively looking at this team and all, across the teams, we watch a lot of football across the teams. Did you watch the Falcons and think, oh man, this team's worse than I thought they were going to be? Or did you think, there might be something there? There's some big questions that we have answers. Right tackle. Caleb McGarry's looked great. He's looked really good at right tackle. Left guard, Elijah Wilkinson. He's been solid. I don't need all pro at left guard. I just need you to not be Jalen Mayfield 2021 version. Done. Defensive line. Taquan Graham looks like a star right now. Abdullah Anderson is a freaking beast. And we haven't seen Anthony Rush, who's a starter. We haven't seen the best of Grady Jarrett, but there's 4 right now on your defensive line at your front 3. Lorenzo Carter and Arnold Ebiketie are going to be upgrades over what you had at edge. Casey Hayward is a massive upgrade at corner over Fabian Moreau. I do have questions at the safety positions. Those still scare me a little bit. But when I'm talking about my biggest questions right now are at safety, you're not feeling like this is a 32nd team. And again, if you think it is, well, Marcus Mariota is the worst quarterback in the league, worst starting quarterback. Okay, fine. But they looked better than that in the preseason. They looked better than you were expecting. So if you're expecting them to be 30, I wouldn't move them down to 32. That's all I was saying with that. I don't see any reason to move this team down. I don't think I'm as cynical as a Falcons fan as you will ever find growing up in Atlanta. From 1980 was my first season. They blew a 2-touchdown lead to the Cowboys in the playoffs. I was 7 years old. It didn't get better the next 10 years. I promise you that. I'm as cynical as they come. And I didn't see reason to think this team was going to be worse than I thought. We'll see how week 1 goes against the Saints. Because last year in the preseason, if you remember, we didn't see any of the starters. We saw zilch in the preseason. We saw nothing. Then they go out there, and I'm pretty sure the first game was against the Eagles, who were coming off a bad season as well. And the Eagles just beat the hell out of the Falcons in the trenches. I was like, oh my God, this team's horrendous. And they weren't very good. They weren't very good. They got 1-score wins against some other really bad teams in the NFL, which is good. That to me, that showed this coaching staff can coach for the close games, but the team wasn't very good. This year, we've seen a lot of good in the preseason. Again, the quarterback play, right tackle, I just went through all of them. So I don't see any reason to move them down. That was the problem I had with the rankings. Say you're 32. If you thought they were 32, stick with it. But this team looked a lot better in the preseason at very key spots where they had questions than I was expecting, for sure. James Hamilton coming in on Facebook. Good morning, James. Appreciate you being here. And Jim Frank comes in and asks, Scott, who makes a 53 roster and who makes a 16 practice squad? Good to see you back on again. Great job from Korea. Jim, it's good to see you. And you may be one of my old dog post folks back on the porch. So I appreciate you. We've been doing this a long time together, Jim. So it's good to be back. Good to be back in content. I've been in the administrative side of the sports media business for too long. So it's good to be back out here, doing my own thing, doing what I love doing most, and that's talking football with y'all. So appreciate you being here, Jim, and hope all is well on the other side of the world. And Roderick comes in. He says, anything better than awful exceeds my expectations. And Roderick, that might be part of it too. I mean, I do. Again, I'm super cynical. I text my friend the other day. I said, I'm going to be honest with you. I haven't watched a lot of the Braves games because every time I watch them, they freaking lose. And they don't lose many games. So you start to feel like a jinx. I said, guess who I watched Saturday night? Yeah, 9-game winning streak goes down the drain. I'm like, I did my best. I turned it off after Arenado hit that second home run, and I flipped it back on in the 9th when they had a man on second, and I turned it off as quick as I could. It was too late. I'm sorry. But yeah, I think, Roderick, I had this team when the rosters came out. Nick and I went through the schedules when the schedules first came out. I think I went through the schedules, and if I picked 3 and I couldn't have picked more than 3. So at best, I had them 3-14. I was thinking Carolina Panthers at home, who frankly got a lot better with Baker Mayfield. That's not the tap in that you might have expected to at least get a split from those two, because that happened last year. The Carolina Panthers were good in the trenches. The Falcons were not good in the trenches. So the Carolina Panthers came into Atlanta and bullied. I think that's how it was. The Falcons won there, and then they each lost at home. Either way, the Falcons were bullied by the Panthers in the first game and then went back and beat them in the second game. Mayfield's a better quarterback than Sam Darnold. Newsflash. That's not a hot take. So we'll see. We will see how that one goes. Going back to Jim's question. Sorry, I was saying hello to Jim and reminiscing for a second. Didn't answer your question. Who makes the 53 roster and who makes the practice squad? That might be a little bit tough to go through, right now without boring everybody to tears. If you've got any specific questions on specific players, I have some very interesting battles. You're like, okay, well, you can't keep all those guys. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. They've got 7 guys listed at tight end. I've really liked what I've seen, and the Tennessee Titans fans loved Michael Pruitt. They loved him before he got hurt last year. Does he find space? The guy's built like a tank. I mean, he's got shoulders and legs and everything. He's super wide. Those are the kind of guys I like see get loose in the defensive backfield and start trucking people. Parker Hesse should make, you'd think. Anthony Fursker, none of those guys past Kyle Pitts are locks. I'd like to see Michael Pruitt make this team. You look at the wide receiver position, you figure Bryan Edwards, Drake London, and Olamide Zaccheaus are good. Maybe Damiere Byrd for 4. After that, is Frank Darby safe? Maybe. Kadero Hodge, maybe. Looked good. Jared Bernhardt has a role on special teams as well. Has looked good at wide receiver. Keyshawn Johnson had a nice, I think I put him down as look good as a gunner. Yeah, he had a really nice special teams play. And then had a nice catch over the middle as a smaller guy, kind of that Russell Gage guy coming in on a slant or a post over the middle. So there's some questions there. You've got 3 guys listed at left guard: Elijah Wilkinson, Jalen Mayfield, Justin Schaefer. Justin Schaefer was spectacular in this last game. He was really, really good. Yeah, he had a couple of misplays, but I was focusing on him almost every play. I was watching the left guard position a lot because I feel like Justin Schaefer as a draft pick has a chance to make an impact on this team. If not this year, then maybe next year. So he could be one of those practice squad guys that you can bubble up and down. Frankly, I'd try and move Jalen Mayfield to the practice squad. Justin Schaefer looked better yesterday, again, against second and third string, mostly third strings. On Saturday, than Jalen Mayfield has looked in his first year as a Falcon. So I think, I think that Justin Schaefer's got a spot on this team. The defensive side of the ball, I think, might be a little bit easier. Dorian Etheridge has been really good in the preseason, both, but coming off with an injury, maybe you can stash him away on the practice squad again. I thought it was interesting to see Isaiah Oliver out there listed as a starting corner. I don't know if he's actually going to be the starting corner, but he was out there in the third quarter. If you're out there in the third quarter of that game, I don't know that you can expect him to be a starter for sure. But Isaiah Oliver is going to make this team. Don't get me wrong on that. It's just another note. Plenty of folks coming in are starting to trickle in on Facebook, but only 4 likes so far. So make sure you're hitting that like button. And I want to check it. I know I'll keep an eye on that chat. I have to watch that one separately because I know we've got the ability to do stars on Facebook now, and I'll keep an eye on it and see if those are coming in. So I always love to want to give a special shout out to the folks that come in with stars. Dave coming in says, "Good morning, Scott. Why do most fans apologize for their comments regarding the preseason? We know it's a process and a depth thing when it comes to the preseason. So, Dave, when you say apologize for it, I think people probably, you might want to say, listen, I'm sorry, but the Falcons are going to stink this year. Is that why you're apologizing? Is that what you mean? I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, so I'm apologizing in advance for it. Don't shoot the messenger. This is what I think. So it might be something along those lines. But it's definitely a process. The one, again, and I see a lot of people in the comments because I post a lot of videos, a lot of content around the Falcons and frankly around Arthur Smith's personality, so to speak. And y'all have heard me say a zillion times, I'm a fan of Arthur Smith. I don't want people to get their hopes too high and then go after his head, on call-in shows, on the internet, on all these things, where the Falcons don't reach people's exceeded expectations. And what I've seen so far on that, Dave, is people saying, oh, well, they won 7 games last year. They should be better this year. So they should win, 9 or 10 this year. No, no, that's just not how it works. It's not, I don't think it's going to work. If you look at anybody who has an objective opinion, which means they don't necessarily have a dog in the hunt. Yeah. Are you biased against the Falcons? Maybe. Are they biased to the Falcons to the extent where every single media outlet in the world has put the Falcons in the bottom 3? No, they're not that biased. They're looking at this team and saying, you lost your leading receiver. You lost your leading tackler. You lost your franchise quarterback. You've got $65 million in dead cap money. You're in trouble. You are. That's not a good way to go through a season of football. I've said it, there's if you're from Georgia and a Falcons fan, then you're a college football fan. So can you imagine going through, instead of 83 scholarships, you're going out there playing with, well, let's just take 30 off there. And you're going out there and playing with 50 scholarship players instead of 83. You're in trouble. You are in trouble. And that's what the Falcons are doing. So it's not quite an apples to apples comparison, but it's tough. So the expectations for me, because AJ comes in from Facebook and says record prediction. AJ, it might end up being like the worst case scenario, honestly. What's the worst case scenario for me? Another 7-10. That would be about as worst case as it gets. Because you're not good enough. The Falcons were bad last year. They're in the playoff hunt. They were 7-7-8 or 6. They hovered around 500 for a long time. They were a bad football team last year. They had no business. They had no chance to make a run. They weren't one of those teams like, if they get in, they can get hot. No. They had no chance. They were smoke and mirroring their ways to wins against some really bad teams. And if they go 7-10 again, you're picking around 10 or 11 or 12 instead of the top 5 where you really want to be. But I can see this happening, AJ, where they end up 6-11, where they win a couple more games than we're expecting. Because I was expecting 2-15, 3-14, based on all the factors that I had said in. They didn't address right tackle. Caleb McGarry's playing better. They didn't do much but bring in a journeyman at left guard. Okay, well, that's still better than Jalen Mayfield. The defense is going to be better this year, more attack-minded. I think we'll see less bend but don't break and a little bit more attack minded on the defensive side of the ball. And I'm looking forward to that. And 18 sacks is an aberration. Sorry, my nose is itching. These fall allergies coming. So that was an aberration. What is not an aberration is Nick Kendell coming in, and I want to welcome him in from Seattle. So my record prediction, I'm going to say 5-12. I think 5-12. I've almost doubled their win total, AJ. 5-12, knocking on the door of a top 5 pick. Probably out of the range of the guys you really, really want in the draft, but close enough that you could maybe trade up without giving up a huge haul to move up a spot or two. Nick Kendell, welcome in. We appreciate you being here. How was your weekend? I know you were doing a 30-mile hike through all kinds of elevation. So I'm hoping you are nice and safe and sound.
Nice and safe and sound. Very tired. Got back pretty late last night. We had to drop off a car at one end and then drive it to the other, which added, made it to about a 5.5-hour drive home last night. So got back decently late, but feeling good, feeling excited. Legs are a little tired. Crossed 4 glaciers across the north side of Mount Rainier. Had brought my Lion coffee with, which was great too. So good times. No, feeling good. Back to reality, and really a good way to cap off the end of the summer, and hopefully winter can hold off for a little bit up here. Winter's in Seattle. They're not cold, they're not blustery, but they're gray and wet.
Yeah, that drive back after a weekend like that was probably the most dangerous part of your entire trip, as people are starting to nod.
Yeah.
Nod. It's like, okay, we're going to keep it 30 degrees in here, and we're going to drink lots of coffee.
Yep. Yeah, that was sponsored by Red Bull, that drive home. But yeah, no, made it home, and we got Skyline coming right into business here, saying, do you think the Falcons' first-round pick in last year's draft from USC, Drake London, is injury-prone? I'm hoping he's durable and able to contribute alongside Kyle Pitts. I think it's way too early to say injury-prone or not. He's obviously dealing with a dinged up right now, but to say that he is injury-prone, you want to gather probably multiple years worth of data and like different kinds of injury before I'd put on that kind of label on the guy.
Yes, but Skyline, the early returns haven't been great. He missed last season, didn't go through the combine process, didn't run his 40 at his pro day. First play of the game, dings up his knee. That said, Skyline, if this were a regular season game, I think he would have been back in that very game. So he hasn't been missing anything that I know of as far as practice goes. I haven't heard that. I don't remember reading that anywhere. I haven't seen that. But again, I hope not. There's a lot invested in him. That was a risky draft pick where they took him, considering all of the good receivers that were still down the line to go with another receiver. Yes, they needed a receiver. I know they needed everything. They needed a receiver, Scott. Yes, I know. They needed everything except maybe a starting tight end. And even that's questionable because Kyle Pitts plays 3/4 of his snaps at wide receiver. And then, so I'm not going to say injury prone, but he needs to be available for sure.
Yeah.
And Dave says, what I mean is it's okay to praise a team and single players. Sorry for ambiguity. Dave, I think some people get caught into the, are you a fan of the team or are you a fan of the players? You can't, here comes, there's almost like a Marcus Mariota and Desmond Ridder camp forming already. You're just a Mariota fanboy. Desmond Ridder was obviously better, or he's obviously. It's like, guys, chill, and that's just the internet. You'll notice, Dave, you don't ever have those conversations in person. You never have those conversations with a real life person, just internet superheroes. So I wouldn't worry about it too much. And Roderick reminds us last year that yes, one of the reasons, despite being in a 4-way tie last year with a record, that the Falcons picked as high as they did was because they did have the easiest schedule in the NFL, bar one. I think one more team, may have been the Dolphins, maybe. I'm not sure who it was, but there was one team I think that had an easier strength of schedule than the Falcons. I kind of flushed that, but that seems to ring a bell. Nick's looking up, Tankathon real quick, sorting by strength of schedule 2021. But I think there was only one team that had an easier schedule than the Falcons last year when all was said and done. And that's hard to do when you're losing your games as well, and every one of your opponents gets an extra win.
I couldn't find it because they already have the 2023 tankathon
I
up, so
know, I know.
they're ready
And I
for it.
don't see
But
how it goes backwards. So let me see here. And here's a good question as we get in close to cutdown days. Dave says, guys, why can't the NFL go to a 60-man roster? Please don't tell me it's a money issue rather than the safety of the players. No, it's not a money issue. I'll tell you exactly what it is. I just want to see if Nick will have the same answer.
it's the players' union. Only so many pieces of the pie, and I think that they have taken away some is going to hurt some of the guys that are making the roster there. So I think it has to do with that.
The players union would be happy for people to have more jobs. So they'd be okay with that. They'd be okay with a 60.
Well, then it's the
An
other way
NFL
around.
parity issue.
Mm.
It's a parity issue to keep teams from being able to hoard those extra 7 players on their teams. So I say I don't mind parity. I'm not a big fan of forced parity. If I'm able to draft and develop and have better players, I shouldn't necessarily have to give them up. But it's the same reason why they went to 83 scholarships in college football. Is because the traditional powers of the world were keeping 100, unlimited scholarships, and they're hoarding all the best players. So it's a parity issue, Dave, too. And that's why the rules for coming on and off the rosters are pretty lax when you compare them to other sports. It's pretty lax. I mean, I can sign a guy and put him on the roster like in the middle of the playoffs. What? That doesn't make any sense. My roster should be fixed. I should have a fixed playoff roster. It's a parity issue. They want things to be as even as possible and not have the top teams hoard all the best players.
Yep, makes sense. And I think at some point you will see some sort of expansion on the roster. I mean, it's just heading that way, especially with more and more specialization going on there. But I mean, at the same time, it seems like the football numbers, especially west of the Mississippi, high school numbers have gone down a tad. So something to watch out for. Maybe there's not as much talent as you'd hope.
10 years ago, it was down 10%. Participation in youth football after all of the talk of the concussions started happening. Now, the concussions weren't as scary to me as just anybody who played beyond high school that I had come into contact with, which was hundreds of people. They all had health issues, shoulders, hips, knees, necks. Even before you get to the wear and tear is, I mean, I started thinking about it, and I don't want to sound, too, well, you're just soft or, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But how is the sport too dangerous when we're afraid to play the sport? I mean, when you're afraid to play the players in preseason games, when you will not play them in preseason games because you're afraid of losing them, tells you a lot about the sport itself, Nick.
Yeah. Love football. So hopefully
I know we all do, and it's part of the American fabric, and it's the greatest team sport in the world. But some of the things I love about it are the violence and the contact and all of those things. And I've kept my son out of it for now. He's heading to 9th grade next year. He's an 8th grader right now, and I see the kids he plays baseball with playing football, and I'm like, God, Sean would just kill those guys. So it gets tough. It's tough, but all the football players I know have their kids playing baseball.
Yeah, I also think the injuries and whatnot. I can't believe the NFLPA in the last collective bargaining agreement didn't come to some sort of lifelong life insurance for vested veterans and whatnot once they're out of the league. It's a lot of players, but like that would, in my opinion, that would be
when it
priority
becomes
one.
a money issue.
Yeah. Yeah,
but I mean, please don't tell me it's a money issue. No, but the long-term health care for these guys is a money issue.
Yeah,
that's a different. We'll come back to that in a time when we're not a couple hours away from cut downs.
Yeah.
But real quick, your gut reaction from what you saw against the Jags. What were some initial thoughts here? Just a couple bullet points as we start closing out the show here.
I was a little bit. I was hoping for more from Desmond Ridder. I thought it wasn't his best game. 2 interceptions. The rushing wasn't there. I thought he still looked calm and collected, but wasn't his best game, in my opinion. Also, I was hoping for Tyler Algier to just beat the tar out of them. They didn't really lean into him so much, which makes me think they want to use him this season. But he only had like 3.5 yards per carry against that Jags defense. Not what you want. The offensive line really wasn't opening holes for him. That's one of my bigger things with Tyler Algier. He kind of doesn't need a runway. That makes him sound a little bit too much like a plotter, but he definitely needs to get space to that second level, and then he becomes an issue. So those are my two. Looking at the rookies, some of my big takeaways. Overall, a pretty good game. Gotta say, I didn't watch the all 22 or anything. Watched the quick version because got back late last night. The game was going on. I just found out yesterday that Nebraska lost to Northwestern. I'm still on cloud nine about that. But no, yeah, those Desmond Ridder specifically had hope for more. If he would have come out and had like an amazing game, on fire, great stats, protected the football, maybe we'd have a conversation more about Mariota. But Ridder looked most like a rookie I'd seen him look like this preseason, in my opinion.
Yeah, so I thought he looked really good, not just for a rookie, but solid. Through those interceptions. And one of the things I liked about him may have been the interception, the first one, because that was his first throw of the game.
Mm-hmm.
And then he was very calm, cool, and collected the rest of the way. He came right back. It didn't necessarily phase him. He didn't try and do too much. And then the second interception was, just the last play of the half. That was one of those stats interceptions. I'm not too worried about it. In fact, Arthur Smith actually he's been surly as hell this fall camp. He's like, he threw that interception. So what? And he goes, those are for stats for internet people. He's like, he's a real football player. He doesn't care about that last one. Put that one on me. Whatever. I'm like, all right.
Yep. And my final takeaway that I saw, I thought Arnold Ebiketie looked good in this one. Overall, he's a really good player, man. I'm really excited for you guys to have him. His run defense, I thought, looked a little bit better, which, I thought Nick Benito's run defense looked too. So maybe everybody got the memo this week that you have to play the run it's like eating your vegetables to get your dessert. Those pass rush opportunities only come if you get those third and longs. So I thought Ebiketie's run defense looked better as well. And he just looks so long and good twitch off the line of scrimmage. I don't ever think he's going to be like a superstar pass rusher, but to get a starting caliber pass rusher on a rookie contract in the early second round, the solid guy, I think that's a great pick. I think he's going to be a good player for you, and he looked good.
Yeah. Good morning, Mark. Mark Schrader coming in, says, good morning, guys. Good morning, Mark, over on YouTube. Glad you could make it with us here today. I had Ebiketie, and I also had, Troy Anderson. I said, rookies ready to contribute, guys that can come in. And we already mentioned Drake London. We haven't gotten to see him much of him. He should be a standout player on this team.
Yeah.
Troy Anderson, I don't know if stopper is the right word, but, anything that comes into his zone, the play's over.
He's a vacuum.
There's no yards after catch in the middle of the field right now. He's taking care of it. He's snuffing it out. He's good going forward. He's good going laterally, and we don't want him going backwards too often.
Yes.
So I'm a big fan of his. Ebiketie again, and then D'Angelo Malone had some flashes too. So, we talk about, you mentioned Nick Benito and the Broncos. I'm like, Nick Benito and D'Angelo Malone weren't drafted that far apart. But based that one was the first pick and one was like the fifth pick in a team's draft, the expectations seem to be wildly variant on those two players. Where D'Angelo Malone, you're like, okay, what can we get out of him? He's an upside guy. Anything we get is going to be a bonus. But Ebiketie is going to come in and be starter, and he's looked very, very good. And I tell you what, Nick, I'm not sure if you heard me say it before. I've been impressed as hell with Abdullah Anderson. Big number 65 in the middle of that defense is a freaking beast. So, can he do it against ones when he's being targeted by a starting center and a starting guard? But he was able, I saw him, go to the 3-4 end and on the nose guard, and was really, really good in both places. So that's a find. That's a great signing from the Atlanta Falcons.
Yeah. And I got to ask you, it's again, didn't watch the entirety of like the whole game and listen to the announcers and whatnot. D. Alford, was he even out there? Because, obviously in these kind of games, you want to notice who doesn't play or who has very little snaps and when they have them, because that typically suggests who is safe and who is not safe. And I saw
he was held out. He was held out. And what was interesting to me was Jalen Mayfield was held out too. And that may be an injury thing. I know he's been fighting a back. But I got to think he's fighting for a position. And guys that could be on the bubble, Marlon Davison's in trouble. Big defensive lineman, former second-round pick 3 years ago. This would be his third year. He's in trouble. I put it out there. I don't know if we're going to see him in a Falcons uniform again. I see the guys that are out there now, and I'm like, would I take, let's say, Derek Tangelo, undrafted rookie out of Penn State? Would I take Marlon Davidson over Tangelo right now? No, I wouldn't. Tangelo has shown me more. Nick Thurman was a little bit better at 91. I mean, it's not hard to be better. Marlon Davidson hasn't been very good at all. But Taquan Graham, Anthony Rush, Grady Jarrett, Abdullah Anderson, Derek Tangelo, those are 5 guys for 3 spots that you feel decent about. 4 of them you feel really good about right now.
Yeah.
Marlon Davidson's in trouble on this roster.
Yeah. And I see a tweet here from Aaron Freeman, who covers the Falcons, saying these following players did not play a single snap. Veterans, so that probably means they are not in danger of being cut. Running back Damian Williams, wide receiver Kaderil Hodge, tight end / fullback Parker Hesse, offensive lineman Jalen Mayfield, and offensive lineman Colby Gossett. So those guys probably safe. Obviously, things can happen. But the fact that none of those veterans that are seemingly more on the back end of the roster play a snap probably means they're going to be part of your roster this season.
Yeah, you keep 8 on an active roster during game days, so you might be able to keep 9. I might try and stash Justin Schaefer away if they're intent on keeping Jalen Mayfield. And Ryan Newsel in this game was good as well. In fact, it's nice when your eye test matches the PFF grades, the Pro Football Focus grades, because then you're like, okay, I can use these guys more as a reference for other things. Last year against the Cowboys, Falcons were just blown out of the water. It was the week after the Broncos had just killed them, and the Cowboys were pissed off and took it out on the Falcons. They had like 30 yards of offense, and Jalen Mayfield gets like a 95 grade at guard. I'm like, okay, something's wrong here. But if you look at the offensive grades from PFF, Ryan Newsel, who I was like, okay, he was really good, was the number 1 graded player for the Falcons. And what's interesting, they only played 42 guys, Nick, on offense and defense in a preseason game. So they only played 20 guys on offense. They only played 22 on defense. So when you've got an 80-man roster that you're cutting down to 43 and you only played, 40 guys, it was a good chance for those players. And I think a lot of them took advantage of it. And my last note on this, and this is kind of for Falcons fans in general, is watching the way these guys played was fun. They went out there and they're like, you know what? This might be, and you didn't get to see this, Nick, if you watch the condensed version, if you watch the full game, they went out and played like this could be the last time I ever get to play football. And they went out there with their hair on fire. They celebrated their wins. I mean, individual wins, the battles, plays, like it was a Super Bowl for them. And to some of them it was. And to me, that speaks well. And I've said it before, these guys play for Arthur Smith. Being a lifelong Atlanta Braves fan, Bobby Cox may not have been the best game day manager ever. That's overrated in baseball. Are you a manager of men? Can you keep these guys playing at a high level over the course of a 4-month season? And I really like what I saw from those guys. So let me see. There was one more player that I wanted to call out, was Quentin Bell on the edge, who got the block punt. I didn't know much about Quentin Bell before that. He's on the back end. Is he a guy that could get himself can he get himself a roster spot? Special teams is a decent way to do it. And one more question from Dave. That was kind of rhetorical. One more question for Dave. 2 questions, guys. One more comment from Dave with 2 questions. Can Ritter be more than a game manager, and can he make every throw? Yeah, I think he can be more than a game manager because he's got incredible speed. He's got wheels, and he can throw on the run, and he's got enough arm to hit the throws that he needs to in the NFL. So I think he can. If you were to hit his ceiling based on his tools, he'd be a plus quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah, I've said it before on here. His ceiling, I think, or his best case scenario pathway, which, I mean, God, could he, best case, Nick, he'd be the best quarterback to ever live. But more of a realistic, I guess, best case is he becomes like a Dak Prescott-esque quarterback, where Dak has a good arm, probably a B+ arm. It's not Josh Allen. It's not Patrick Mahomes, but a good arm, manages from in within the pocket, a really good pocket passer that can, break glass in case of emergency with the athleticism and handle the rush and whatnot. So I think that's your ideal situation with Ritter. I think Ritter probably has a little bit more long speed, but Dak's more built than Ritter. Ritter's a little bit skinnier. But I think that's your best case. And can he make every throw? Yes, he can as far as an arm talent perspective. He's got to be more consistent, though. And this is based more so on his college tape because I spent way more time with that. He's got to be much more accurate on a throw-to-throw basis. He can just sometimes sail some that are turf one that doesn't make much sense, even though his I can get a little bit ahead of himself on his feet. So those are the questions for me. It's the consistency throw by throw for Ritter as far as can he make every throw?
Right. Can he? Will he? Again, can he make them? Yeah, I've seen enough arm strength to make every throw he needs to make. Can he make them on a consistent basis? We'll see. Like I said, I like the tools on him. He's tall, he's fast, he's got enough arm. I like the moxie of him. I think he was a steal in the third round.
Yeah.
Again, I'm very pleased with what I've seen. I wouldn't absolutely say the Falcons have to go get a quarterback next year. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. And that should be interesting. Well, Nick and I are going to get out of here. We're going to hop on over to Mile High Huddle and break down Broncos and Vikings. God, for the life of me, I couldn't remember who they played yesterday. I'm like, I've watched too much football and softball and soccer and baseball. I don't even know. I can't remember anymore. But I've watched the first half of that 3 times now. So hopefully the purple has thrashed in. So we're going to hop on over to Mile High Huddle. And as always, we appreciate you being here. We will be back on Wednesday morning to break down the 53-man roster and see where some of the players are coming back for the practice squad. Because, last year, Nick, I felt like, all right, if these guys disappear, so what? But there's some guys I'm excited about. There's some young guys with upside that I'm interested in. It's like, oh, good. They were able to keep him on the practice squad or bring in some help from some other teams. So we will see you over there in just a few moments if you want to hop over and continue the NFL conversation. But until then, we will see you Wednesday morning for what should be another exciting day of Falcons football as we cut our roster from 80 to 53. So until then, we will see you.